The pink neon sign buzzed overhead like it had something to say. Delaney Cruz stood beneath it in the cold Chicago air, jaw tight, hands shoved into her jacket pockets, staring at absolutely nothing. Humiliated, still processing. And if you're already trying to figure out how she got here, good. Stay with me. Because this story doesn't start with a kiss. It starts with 4 years of almost. But we'll get to that. First, the karaoke bar. 30 seconds ago, Delaney had been inside, sitting at a table full of people she actually liked, laughing at something Avery said, feeling, for the first time in a long time, like maybe she was finally moving forward. And then Sable happened. The way it went was this. Some guy 3 drinks deep leaned across the table, looked between Avery and Delaney, and said with a big stupid grin, "You two are cute together." "You dating?" Avery laughed softly. Delaney started to say something vague. And Sable, who had been quietly unraveling in the corner booth for the past 2 hours, cut in like she'd been waiting for exactly this moment. Pause, she didn't come here with her. The table went quiet immediately. The drunk guy blinked. Then who'd she come with? Sable looked directly at Delaney, not at the table, not at Avery, at Delaney. Like nobody else in the room existed. Dropped like a period at the end of a sentence nobody else got to finish. Pause. And the silence that followed was the specific kind that only happens when everyone in a room realizes something just shifted permanently. Delaney felt it crawl up the back of her neck. Because this was exactly what Sable always did. Claimed her just enough to hurt, in ways that meant nothing on paper. In ways she could laugh off by morning. Delaney was done sitting still for it, so she grabbed her jacket and left, fast, no speech, no eye contact, just out. And here's where it gets worse. Because what happened outside that bar, under that pink neon sign, is the part that actually broke everything open. And I need you to stay with me for it. The street wasn't empty. Smokers near the entrance. 2 people waiting on an Uber at the curb. Someone pacing on a phone call. Nobody paying attention yet. Avery came outside less than a minute later. No dramatic entrance. Just there. Reading Delaney's face the way she always did. Quietly, without making it weird. "You okay?" "Fine," Delaney said, which was not even slightly true and they both knew it. Avery didn't push immediately. She just stood beside her under the buzzing pink light and let the silence breathe. "Then she's in love with you," Delaney laughed. "No! She just hates losing attention." Avery looked at her with the kind of patience that felt almost unfair. "Delaney, I'm serious. This is what she does. She pulls me close enough that I can't breathe, and then the second I stop waiting for her to." She stopped, pressed her lips together. "She only wants me when she thinks someone else might." Avery was quiet for a moment, then said carefully, "Or she's been terrified this whole time and you showing up with someone else finally made it real." Delaney opened her mouth, closed it, stared at the wet pavement, and before she could figure out what to say, the bar door swung open, Sable, jacket half on, eyes stormy, breathing slightly too fast for someone who'd just walked 30 feet. She stopped when she saw them both standing there. Something moved across her face, too fast to name, then went carefully, deliberately blank. The smokers near the entrance had gone quiet. The person on the phone had stopped pacing. Nobody was pretending not to watch anymore. Sable barely holding it together. Avery looked at her for a long moment, then looked at Delaney, and said, quietly enough that it almost felt private, "Tell her before someone else does." Something in Sable's expression cracked clean through, not loudly, just a fracture, 1 second wide, and then she crossed the distance between them, hand on Delaney's wrist first, then her jacket lapel, and then kissed her, right there, under the buzzing pink neon, in the cold Chicago air, in front of the smokers and the Uber crowd and the woman she'd spent months watching Delaney smile at. It wasn't soft. It wasn't polished. It was 4 years of denial hitting a wall at full speed. Desperate and impulsive and a little bit angry, and so devastatingly honest that Delaney, for one completely humiliating second, kissed her back. And reality landed. She pulled away hard enough to make Sable's eyes open in surprise. "You only want me when you think someone else might take me." Quiet, not a yell, not a scene, just the truth. Spoken plainly, under pink light, in front of strangers. And then Delaney walked away, leaving Spabes standing exactly where she always left her, reaching for something she'd waited too long to hold. But here's what you don't know yet. This moment was 4 years in the making, and the part that actually started it is so much quieter than you'd expect. To understand why that kiss happened, you have to understand Sable Mercer. And I'm warning you now, she is not simple. Sable was the kind of woman who walked into a room and made everyone feel slightly underdressed without trying. Tall, composed. She designed luxury interiors for wealthy clients across Chicago and somehow made silence feel like a deliberate personality choice. Cold? Not exactly, just contained. Like everything she felt lived behind a door she only unlocked alone. Delaney Cruz was chaos in platform boots, freelance illustrator, laughed too loudly, cried during animal shelter commercials. Once turned a grocery run into a 2-hour emotional support adventure because a stranger in the cereal aisle looked sad and she physically could not walk past that. A little self-aware, they made absolutely no sense together, which was probably exactly why nobody could stop watching them. Mutual friends, a rooftop party. Sable telling Delaney her illustration portfolio had interesting bones in a tone that required 3 full days of analysis to confirm was actually a compliment. Somehow that became weekly dinners, then daily texts. Then Delaney knowing Sable's exact coffee order. Oat milk, no sugar, 1 pump of vanilla that she would flatly deny requesting if anyone else was listening. It happened slowly. Then all at once. Like waking up one morning and realizing your apartment smells like someone else's perfume because she practically lives there already. Gentle, movie nights became falling asleep on the same couch. Quick goodbyes became hands that held on a second too long. Their arguments started sounding like the kind only couples have. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, without any dramatic moment or lightning bolt, Delaney fell completely in love with her best friend. Embarrassingly easy. Absolutely inconvenient. And here's the part that'll make you understand everything that comes after. Sable knew. Not consciously, but she knew. And what she did with that knowledge is where this whole thing gets complicated. There were rules, unspoken, never stated directly, but enforced with quiet, devastating consistency. Sable would hold Delaney's hand crossing icy streets, rest her chin on her shoulder while looking at sketchbook pages. Call it 2 in the morning just to ask what movie she should watch. But the second anyone implied they looked like more than friends, polite laugh. Delaney's basically family. That one lands heavy. 4 years, that sentence. On repeat. Like a bruise Delaney kept walking into in the dark. Now here's where it gets interesting. Because Sable, who insisted she was completely, categorically straight, got jealous in ways that honestly should have required licensed intervention. Dry, she hated every woman Delaney dated. Not openly, too controlled for that. Instead, sudden work emergencies on the exact nights Delaney had plans. Inviting herself to things she'd previously shown zero interest in, sitting across from whoever Delaney brought around and studying her like she was identifying structural weaknesses. One girlfriend lasted exactly 3 weeks before pulling Delaney aside and asking, "Are you sure you're not already in a relationship with your best friend?" At the time, Delaney laughed. She is not laughing now. But here's the part nobody warns you about. The jealousy you could almost survive. It was the inconsistency that quietly hollowed you out. Sable wanted closeness without confession, ownership without honesty, everything except the actual word for what this was. And I need you to understand that pattern because it's exactly what makes the parking garage scene so devastating. And trust me, we're getting there. Okay, wait, hold on. Stop. Are you watching this and you're not subscribed yet, baby? Angel, I need you to hear me right now. This channel is literally a whole safe space I built for people like us, the ones who feel everything too deeply. The ones who've been waiting forever for someone to just get it. That's what this is. That's what we are here. So tap that subscribe button real quick because your people are already in here waiting on you. You're not just watching a story, you're coming home. Okay, go tap it. I'll wait. Good, welcome Angel. Now let's get back to this mess. The worst moments weren't the jealousy. The worst moments were the soft ones. Like the rainy night they made dinner together in Sable's apartment. Neither of them felt like talking much, and somehow that was perfect. Music low in the background, something warm on the stove. Delaney dancing badly in socked feet across the kitchen tile because she could not hear a good song and stand still about it. And Sable, leaning against the counter with a glass of wine, watching her with this small, completely unguarded smile. Not the polished smile she gave clients. Not the controlled one she wore at parties. The real one. The one that only came out when she thought nobody important was looking. Delaney had her back turned. She didn't see it, but she felt it. The specific warmth of being watched by someone who actually sees you. Then she turned around, flour on her hands from the focaccia disaster they were attempting, and Sable stepped forward automatically and brushed it off her cheek. Slowly, thumb grazing her cheekbone like it was the most natural thing in the world. 3 seconds of complete silence, the rain against the windows, the low music, neither of them breathing. Then Sable blinked, pulled her hand back, looked away, reached for her wine like nothing happened. And Delaney stood there, flower on her face, heart doing things it had absolutely no business doing, and said nothing. Because what was she supposed to say? Hey, could you not touch me like that unless you mean it? She said nothing, like she always did, like she'd been trained to. And that moment right there, that tiny pulled back hand, is the exact reason Delaney made the decision she made next. No speech, no ultimatum, no dramatic confrontation, just exhaustion. Delaney stopped answering every late night call, stopped canceling her own plans when Sable wanted company, stopped rearranging herself around a woman who treated her like everything and nothing at the exact same time. Small changes, barely visible, but Sable felt every single one. Like a change in air pressure she couldn't name. Moodier, more restless, reaching for her phone and putting it back down without texting. Her nervous system registered the distance before her brain caught up to what it meant. And that specific moment of quiet panic in Sable Mercer is exactly when Avery Vale walked into the picture, and nothing was ever the same after that. Now, here's where the story actually starts moving. Because up until this point, Delaney had been patient. Quietly, exhaustingly, embarrassingly patient. But patience has an expiration date, and Delaney's ran out on a random Tuesday afternoon when she was fleeing the worst blind date of her entire life. And I mean fleeing. Fake emergency text sent, jacket already on. Out the door before the appetizers arrived, she ducked into the nearest bookstore cafe 2 blocks away, slid through the door like someone who was definitely not being chased, and immediately walked directly into a table and knocked over a full chai latte, all over the floor, in complete silence, because of course the entire cafe looked up at exactly that moment. Completely unbothered was a woman with a book in her lap and the most unimpressed expression Delaney had ever seen in her life. She watched the whole thing happen, didn't flinch, didn't rush to help. Just looked at Delaney, then looked at the chai latte situation on the floor, then looked back at Delaney, and laughed so hard she snorted. That was Avery Vale. And here's what you need to understand about why Avery mattered, named explicitly. It wasn't that she was perfect. It wasn't even that she was Delaney's type. It was that she liked Delaney clearly. No translation required. No 3-day analysis period. I know you're basically family with the warmth surgically removed. Just interest, stated directly, like a completely normal, emotionally available human being. And for someone who'd spent 4 years decoding Sable Mercer like she was a language nobody had written a dictionary for yet, that clarity felt like oxygen. Of course, Sable felt it within 48 hours. Nobody told her. She just knew. She always knew. And what she did about it is where this story gets really interesting. I want you to pay close attention here, because this is the part people miss. Sable didn't explode when she sensed Delaney pulling away. That would have been easier to read. Instead, she did something much more dangerous. She got quiet, and then she got closer. Pause. Suddenly texting more than usual, showing up with coffee unannounced, asking questions pitched just slightly too casual to actually be casual. So who were you out with last night? You seemed distracted. Everything okay? I called twice. You were busy? Like someone who could feel a door closing and kept finding small ways to wedge a foot in the gap. And the worst part? Delaney noticed every single one and said nothing, because she'd been trained by 4 years of almost to not name what she was seeing. But here's what I need you to understand before we get to karaoke night, because karaoke night is where everything Sable had been quietly holding together started coming apart in front of people. And it was not subtle. It was supposed to be a normal night, their usual group, their usual bar, their usual corner booth. Except Delaney mentioned, casually, no big deal, that Avery might stop by. Beat Sable said, cool. In the specific tone of someone for whom it was absolutely not cool. Pause dry, Avery arrived looking exactly like someone who had no idea she'd walked into an emotionally loaded situation. Warm smile, easy energy. Zero awareness that she had already become the subject of Sable Mercer's silent psychological evaluation. Within 30 minutes, Sable had interrupted 4 conversations, found 6 separate excuses to touch Delaney's arm, her shoulder, the back of her chair, leaned in close when she spoke even though the music genuinely wasn't that loud, and watched Avery with the quiet, unblinking focus of someone who was absolutely not okay and absolutely refusing to admit it. Then Avery reached over, casually, and brushed a piece of lint off Delaney's sleeve. 2 seconds. Completely meaningless and Sable stopped talking, mid-sentence. The whole table noticed. Nobody said a word. Because here's the thing about Sable, in a quiet spiral, she didn't make scenes. She just became this presence. Heavy, watchful, taking up more emotional space than should have been physically possible. and somehow that was so much worse than if she just said something out loud. Later, while Sable was at the bar, Avery leaned toward Delaney and said quietly, "Your best friend knows she looks at you like she's paying taxes on you?" Pause. Delaney nearly choked on her drink. She straight Avery gave her a look, the kind that communicates 4 complete sentences without using a single word. Delaney, already defensive, she's just protective. Of you specifically. She's like that with everyone. At Sable, who was standing at the counter, staring directly back at them. Not at the bartender, not at her phone. At them. Avery turned back to Delaney and didn't say another word, because she didn't need to. If you think the karaoke night was the most uncomfortable this got, I need you to stay with me. Because what happened in that parking garage later that night, with just the two of them and nobody else around to interrupt, is the moment this entire story pivots on. Don't stop now. It started raining on the walk back to the cars. Not gentle rain, Chicago rain, the arriving suddenly and meaning business kind. The three of them ducked into the nearest parking garage and waited, rain hammering concrete outside, water flooding the gutters, nowhere to go. Then Avery's phone rang. She checked the screen, mouthed 2 minutes at Delaney, and stepped away toward the far end of the garage. The air changes instantly, leaving Delaney and Sable, alone, in a concrete structure with nothing but rain noise and 4 years of unfinished sentences between them. The silence stretched long enough to become something other than silence. Then Sable asked, quietly, not looking at her, "You like her?" "You don't get to ask me that." Sable's jaw tightened immediately. "Why not?" "Because you don't get to act like this." She gestured at nothing and everything simultaneously, and still pretend I'm imagining things. For the first time in 4 years, Sable looked genuinely shaken, not composed, not controlled, just caught. "What things?" she asked quietly. "You know what things? Tell me." "No." "Delaney, because every time I get close to saying it," Delaney said, voice dropping, "you back away, and I'm done being the only one standing there." The weight of that settles over both of them. Sable stepped closer. Too close for the kind of conversation they were pretending to have. Close enough that Delaney could smell rainwater and expensive perfume on her jacket. Pause, dangerous. What if I don't back away this time? Delaney's heart did something it had absolutely no business doing. She needs to hold her ground. She opened her mouth, and Avery's footsteps echoed back across the concrete. Sable stepped back, smoothed her jacket, looked away, the door swinging shut. And something inside Delaney in that exact moment went very quiet, not sad, not angry, just done. Because that was the moment she stopped waiting, not dramatically, just permanently. When Avery reached for her hand outside, Delaney let her, and across the parking lot, Sable saw it. And every single thing she'd been holding together came apart, which is exactly how we ended up back where we started. Pink neon cold air. A kiss that tasted like 4 years of too late. But here's what I haven't told you yet. What happened after Delaney walked away is the part that actually broke Sable Mercer completely open. And it is not what you're expecting. Nobody tells you what happens after you walk away. Like, actually walk away. Not the dramatic movie version where the music swells and everything feels intentional. The real version is, you get home, you take off your jacket, you sit on your apartment floor, and you just sit there, not crying, not relieved. Not anything dramatic, just emptied out. That's where Delaney was. Apartment floor, jacket still half on, staring at the wall like it personally owed her an explanation. It ended under a pink neon sign in front of strangers. But here's what I need you to understand before we get into what happened next, because this is the part people don't talk about. The silence that followed that night broke Sable Mercer in ways the kiss never could have. And what she did during those 3 weeks, when she thought nobody was watching, is honestly the saddest part of this entire story. Stay with me. Delaney didn't block her, didn't send a long message, didn't do anything dramatic at all. She just stopped filling in the gaps. No more responding to every late-night text within 30 seconds like she'd been waiting for it. No more voice notes sent without thinking, those rambling 3-minute ones about nothing that Sable had somehow saved every single one of. No more showing up Sunday mornings with bagels like it was a standing appointment nobody officially made. This is where it gets real. But from the inside, from Sable's side of that silence, it was like someone had quietly removed every small thing that made a day feel normal. And she didn't know how to say that. Didn't know how to admit that her entire nervous system had apparently decided, at some point without her permission, that Delaney Cruz was a basic biological requirement. Cooked too much food out of habit and stood in her kitchen staring at the extra portions. Typed texts and deleted them without sending. reached for her phone 17 times a day and put it back down, slept badly. Woke up at 2 in the morning and stared at the ceiling of her very expensive, very beautifully designed, very empty apartment. And here's the thing about watching someone like Sable Mercer quietly fall apart. You almost miss it. Because she's so controlled, so practiced at looking fine, that the falling apart happens in all the spaces between the moments people actually see, specific T's. And I need you to pay attention right here, because what Avery told Delaney next, completely unprompted, from a woman who had every reason to say absolutely nothing, reframed every single thing Delaney thought she understood about the last 4 years. Don't look away. It was a regular afternoon. Coffee shop. Nothing special. No dramatic setup. Avery just put her cup down, looked at Delaney, and said, "Sable doesn't love you half-was." Delaney opened her mouth. "That's actually the problem." "What does that mean?" Avery wrapped both hands around her cup. "It means she loves you so much it short-circuits her," she said simply. "Every time she gets close to it, actually close, something in her panics. And panicked people don't run toward things. They run circles around them for years." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you think she doesn't care enough," Avery said. "And that's not what's happening. She cares so much she doesn't know what to do with it. And you deserve to know the difference." Pause. Something shifts. Now here's the part that got Delaney. Not the words themselves, but the fact that it was Avery saying them. Avery, who had every reason to let Delaney believe whatever she wanted. Who had every reason to let this situation play out in her favor. Who owed So Mercer absolutely nothing. And she still sat across that table and told the truth anyway. Conversation changed something, not fixed it, not resolved it. Just shifted the lens slightly, enough that when the knock came, late, past midnight, rain loud against the windows, beat, pull forward hard, Delaney already knew who it was before she opened the door. And what Sable said standing in that doorway, soaking wet, composure completely gone, is the sentence Delaney had been waiting 4 years to hear. And it was still not simple. The knock was quiet, almost hesitant, which, for anyone who knew Sable Mercer, was already alarming. Delaney opened the door, and there she was, soaked through her jacket, hair wet. That careful, composed expression she wore like armor completely gone. She looked like someone who had rehearsed this moment the entire walkover and forgotten every word the second the door opened. "I kissed you because I thought I was losing you," she said. No hello, no preamble, no softening, just that. Dropped into the space between them like something she'd been carrying too long. Delaney leaned against the doorframe, said nothing, let it sit. "I know that's not enough," Sable continued. "I know I don't get to say that and have it fix anything." She stopped, jaw tight. "I've been cruel to you," she said quietly. "Not on purpose, but that doesn't make it less real. I need to say it." Delaney looked at her for a long moment, the rain, the city humming below. 4 years sitting right there between them in the doorway. "If Avery never showed up," she said slowly, "would you have ever told me?" As the rain fills the silence, Sable went quiet. Not the controlled quiet, the honest one, the kind that costs something. She didn't answer. And that was the answer. It hurt, the way truth usually does when it finally shows up without its coat on, not because it was cruel, just because it was real. But here's what nobody tells you about that kind of honesty. The kind that arrives soaking wet at midnight with no rehearsed speech. It clears the air in a way nothing else can. Because for the first time standing in that doorway, there was nothing between them. No almost. No performance. No door swinging shut. Just two people. Finally, in the same place at the same time. Pull forward, and what happened after was nothing like either of them planned. Which is exactly why it worked. No grand gesture. No perfect speech. No kiss in the rain, because honestly, they were both too emotionally exhausted for cinematic at 2 in the morning. What actually happened was Delaney stepped back from the doorway, and Sable walked in. That was it. They ended up on the apartment floor. Terrible takeout between them. The specific kind of quiet that only comes after hours of real honesty, when you've finally run out of armor, and there's nothing left to do but just exist next to each other. Sable was quiet for a long time, then rested her forehead against Delaney's shoulder, like she'd done 100 times before. Except this time, nothing was pretending to be something else. "I don't know how to do this normally," she said quietly. Delaney laughed. Soft. Real. Through tears she wasn't fully acknowledging. "I noticed. Probably going to be bad at it. You're already bad at it. That's not encouraging. It wasn't meant to be." Sabas lifted her head, looked at her, really looked, without the composure, without the controlled distance, without the door. "Hi," she said quietly, like they were meeting for the first time. The real first time. "Hi," Delaney said back. No perfect ending, no bow on top. Just two people, finally in the same room in every way that actually counted. Here's the thing about a love story like this one. It's not clean. 4 years is a long time to almost say something. The parking garage should have happened sooner. The karaoke bar claim should have been a conversation, not a public declaration. The kiss under the neon sign should have been softer, less panic, more intention. But here's what Delaney understood, sitting on her apartment floor at 2 in the morning, eating cold takeout next to the most complicated woman she'd ever met. People need to almost lose something completely before they understand what they've been holding. And Sable Mercer, composed, controlled, impossible Sable, had been holding Delaney like something precious she was too terrified to name, until the night she showed up soaking wet with no speech prepared, and named it anyway. And this time, when Sable reached for her hand, neither of them pulled away. If this story got you in your feelings, you're already exactly where you're supposed to be, Angel. This is what we do here every single week. GL stories that actually make you feel something real. If you're not subscribed yet, tap it right now, because we have so much more coming, and you genuinely do not want to miss what's next. Your people are already in here waiting on you. Welcome home, Angel.